the call of the wild. This sees Buck, a big-hearted dog whose blissful domestic life gets turned upside down when he is suddenly uprooted from his Californian home and transplanted to the exotic wilds of the Alaskan Yukon in 1890s. As the newest rookie on a mail delivery dog sled team, Buck experiences the adventure of a lifetime as he ultimately finds his true place in the world. Let's take a little listen to a clip.
Your ancestors used to roam here, and mine, back when we were wild. There's a whole wild world just outside your doorstep, waiting for you to discover it. It's where we came from. It's home. The journey begins with that first step into the unknown. How do you feel about an adventure beyond all maps? Wild calls to each of us. We just have to be willing to listen. Answer the call.
So I think that was a really good sort of trailer clip there that just gives you a broad idea of what the film is about.
Yeah, I was going to say all the other clips were just of the dog. So you just have music and footprints in snow.
Okay, yeah. So that wouldn't have been ideal. So well done for selecting that clip there, Craig. Let's kick off in our usual way with the Rotten Tomato score. So it gets a very solid 62% from the critics and a very good 89% from the, very good indeed, 89% score from the audience. And I'll kick straight off and say that I went into this film having not even seen the trailer. So I went in completely blind. I'd only seen the poster with a very old but still very handsome looking Harrison Ford and his beautiful CGI dog Buck. And I didn't really know what to expect. But before you delve into the plot a little bit, I'll just say that I really, really enjoyed this film.
Well, that's good off the bat, isn't it? Well, I went into this film not really knowing the story, but what I did know was that it was adapted from a Jack London book or novel published in 1903. And I found this film to be, you know, highly gripping and very emotional throughout. And the story of an inner call to the wild, as I might put it, for the wildness from within the dog Buck. And it's also for Harrison Ford's character as well, who's trying to remember or find his place in the world around him. And it's these two joinings of these two characters that really does make the film stand out from other dog films, I think. It's the adventure as well, as you know, those two coming together.
The interesting thing actually is, unlike the source material, John Thornton, who's played by Harrison Ford, actually has a backstory. So they wanted Thornton's experience to be similar to Buck's for the film's adaptation, to show both man and dog finding their strength and overcoming tragedy. So it's interesting that the source material didn't have that backstory, but this did have that backstory. And it was like two beings that were almost always on a path to be together, and when they finally go out into the wild together, it's just a really beautiful and emotional and heartfelt story, because often these dog stories are about dogs coming home. I could think of a number of them. For example, the Homeward Bound, The Incredible Journey, which is one of my favourite childhood films, where you actually have real dogs, two dogs and a cat. So they're real animals. They're not CGI, but the dogs actually speak, and so does the cat. Okay. And it's all about their journey of being in the wild and wanting to get back home, whereas this is the complete opposite of many traditional dog films, where you have a dog that's lost and it goes on a journey to try and get home. This is about a dog trying to find its roots and going out into the wild, and I found that to be a really refreshing and interesting take, obviously based on the source material, but just a really refreshing and just interesting take on that sort of theme. Yeah, no, definitely. And funny enough, though, the previous incarnation of this movie was done by 20th Century Pictures. Now, that was before the Fox merger, which made it obviously 20th Century Fox. And now this one is done by 20th Century Studios, which is now with Fox out of the picture and with the Disney merger. So it's a bit of a weird, almost symmetry going on there with 20th Century Pictures and 20th Century Studios, which I think has no
real meaning to the actual film, because I feel like it's done a very good job in terms of telling this story. We have the director Chris Sanders here. His previous outings are actually Lilo and Stitch, How to Train Your Dragon, The Croods, and now this one. And you'll probably most know him from writing and voice acting in more of your most favorite Disney movies, from Beauty and the Beast to Aladdin, The Lion King, How to Train Your Dragon as well. So it's a real great back catalogue of work there. I don't think this is his finest work. I'd struggle to say that it was, but I do think How to Train Your Dragon was probably one of his best pictures to have been directed. But should we talk about a little bit about the acting, or do you want to put more about the director there?
No. Let's crack on with the acting.
Okay,
yeah.
so in terms of acting, Omar Sy, he played Peru. And he was a Frenchman in there who was the part of the mail delivery system, and he finds Buck and allows Buck to go on this journey with him, and this sort of finds like a pack basically within this pack of dogs that pull their what do you call it? Sled. Yeah, it is a sled, isn't it? Yeah,
full of mail. They're postmen basically.
They are the postmen that ride around on snow, pulled by dogs. Anyway, Omar Sy, some of you may know him from Untouchable, which is a really, really great comedy from France, and it was remade recently into The Upside, which starred Bryan Cranston and Kevin Hart.
Yeah, which we reviewed.
We did. We reviewed it, and I watched The Untouchable before, I believe, seeing The Upside. And Omar Sy in that is brilliant, and I think he brings a lot to this movie. All of the actors, it's a great cast, but he in particularly, I think he had the most impactful scenes for me with Buck.
Yeah.
I won't go into too much detail because you're probably going to want to see it if you haven't seen it yet. And I just really, really, really enjoyed that part of the story. Probably maybe more so than Harrison Ford being in that part, the later on part of the story. I just felt there was a bit more at stake. And a bit more growing and a bit more understanding.
Yeah, I totally agree. But in terms of Harrison Ford, I thought he was brilliantly cast.
Oh, definitely.
And did you see there's a moment in this film where he takes his shirt off? He's in incredible shape. I just wanted to throw that out there. He looked really well.
I don't remember actually, but
maybe I don't know, but let's move on. But no, he's in incredible shape. He's an incredible actor, and I just thought he was brilliantly cast. He brought a real humanity to the role and a real vulnerability and a real sense of sorrow and loss and looking into the wild to find what is within you.
Yeah.
And I just thought he was brilliantly cast. He did a really good performance, performing with this CGI dog that I imagine, obviously, he would have been performing to nothingness.
Well, actually, I believe it's a live action motion capture piece as well. So I believe there is somebody playing the dog at certain points, but also the very photorealistic scans of a dog and then them portraying the movements of it. So basically, Fox have come out, or Fox, I say Fox, it's 20th Century have come out with saying that it's a photorealistic emotionally authentic live action motion capture, which is very different to the CGI that comes out of, for instance, Jungle Book, or even more recently, The Lion King. So obviously Lion King was photorealistic in a lot of senses, but lacking that emotionally authenticness.
Absolutely spot on.
And it's with that kind of CGI here, I think it does very well to meet in the middle. It has the photorealisticness, it has the emotionally authenticness of the expressions and the cheekiness of Buck throughout the movie. There are some moments where you were slightly put off with the CGI. It was very evident that it was CGI, but for the most part, I actually found it not distracting at all.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. For me, I found the CGI on the whole really good. In my opinion, it works like 90% of the time, and therefore you're sort of willing to forgive that 10% of the time where it doesn't quite seem legitimate and something doesn't quite seem right with it. Or a better way of putting it is you're aware that it is a CGI dog, but 90% of the time what it allows Buck to do is really become his own character. So to have those facial expressions, to show sadness, to show happiness, to show that cheekiness that we all know and can see in real life dogs, but sometimes it's difficult for those to be put onto a big screen.
Yeah.
And I thought one of the main problems with Lion King was that the animation was so real that we couldn't get a sense of emotion from these lions, and it really detracted us from the story.
Yeah, and also they are talking as well.
Yes.
There's no voice acting in this film for Buck. It is literally...
Which I really
yes,
like.
I respected that as well. And I think the ratio in Lion King of voice acting being emotionally charged versus the actual visual nature of the characters not being emotionally charged detracted. You needed to have that emotionally authentic nature and realisticness in the capture of the animals at the same time with the voices being toned down a bit in Lion King, whereas this one captures it pretty much spot on, I think.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else that you'd like to say?
Yeah, it was just in regards to the soundtrack. So the music was by John Powell. He's also known for the Bourne films, How to Train Your Dragon, Shrek 2001, Happy Feet, and most recently Solo, A Star Wars Story. I mean, what I would say about the score, it was a very nice score, and what it did, it really enhanced what you were seeing on the screen. So it was a score that had been perfectly matched, like a jigsaw puzzle, to what was unfolding on the screen. It was nothing sensational. It's not the kind of soundtrack. I've just said the word, haven't I? That's why you're laughing.
The key word.
I always say things are sensational. Now I'm saying this wasn't sensational. Damn ye! But no, it wasn't a sensational score. It's not the kind of thing that you would listen to at home, whereas some of the other brilliant scores of the year, like 1917 or Joker, really are like characters of their own.
Yeah.
This wasn't that, but John Powell I think he's done music on over 50 films, so he's a very well-known musical composer. I thought his score was really well done for this film.
It was really well done, but I kind of felt that it wasn't amazing. It didn't jump out at me. It wasn't a character in its own right, but it was just underneath the visuals, and it complemented the visuals, but you wouldn't listen to this to fall asleep to at all. You wouldn't really give it another thought, really.
No. I had to look it up on YouTube and listen to a bit of it, which I did before recording, and just remind myself of it. But a very nice score for the action that unfolded on the screen.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have an email here from Laureline. It's been about 20 years, she says, since I read Jack London's Call of the Wild for school, and I don't recall seeing any of the remakes except for this year's film. It's interesting that this is the first film I've seen bearing the 20th Century Studios logo at the start of the film, because much of the film feels like a Disney film pre-Eisner. It's rated age 6 here in Germany, so gritty it is not. I didn't mind the CGI aspects of Buck. I guess that's the way we're going to go seeing the trouble that Universal got into over A Dog's Purpose. And most of the time I forgot that we were looking at a CGI dog, and it's only occasionally the CGI lets it down. In fact, I thought the CGI did allow them to bring in a bit more characterization into the dogs of the dog sledge pack than they could have done with real dogs. The cinematography of Alaska is suitably impressive. An okay film. It's not one that I want to ever see again, even when it makes its way to Disney Plus eventually. But the two old ladies I took with me, a grandmother and a grand aunt, both said they really, really enjoyed it. So that's a really nice email there. Thank you from our Patreon supporter, Laureline. It's nice to have emails coming in.
Yes, it's brilliant. Really appreciate that email. It's great to read it out on the show, and couldn't agree more with what you said there, particularly about the CGI dog. It is let down at times, but overall it gives that real characterization that the dog needs, Craig.
Yeah, it really does. Do you have anything else to say?
Other than I really enjoyed the film.
Okay, so I might as well ask you the question.
Yes,
then.
please do.
David, The Call of the Wild, is it worth it?
Yes, look, I went into this completely blind. Like I said, I hadn't seen... Blind! Like I said, I hadn't seen any trailers or anything, and I just thought it was a really warm, uplifting, heartfelt, powerful, emotional story with really good performances. It's like Laureline says, some suitably impressive cinematography. Perfect for a family day out, by the way. Perfect for adults, really good for children as well. And a film that I would thoroughly recommend seeing on the big screen. I think this does need to be seen in the cinema.
I pretty much completely agree with you there, David. I don't think I really have to add much more to what you've just said, other than the fact that I think this film is totally worth it.
Oh, I was going to ask you the question. You didn't let me ask you the question. Oh, no.